Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology, and today I want to talk about the feeling that avoidants pretty much need to love and commit. And I think it's very important because it kind of feels backwards, okay? And so the concept we're going to talk about is pressure, but I'm not saying to pressure your partner. I'm going to talk about it in more detail. But basically, avoidance needs some pressure, some fear to feel love and commit. And that's because it will basically help them heal from their attachment issue. You can't let them be 100% comfortable in their maladaptive strategy. That's not healthy, and relationships cannot grow like that. So that's a summary, the basic thing we're going to talk about today, but then we're going to break it up so that we can get more clarification on what this aspect and variable actually means. A lot of people think that the entire absence of pressure is what makes an avoidant commit or realize they love you. That's not true. A small amount of pressure and fear is actually imperative for avoidance to truly commit to somebody. And we're going to talk about how to balance that pressure with some aspects. Pressure and fear does not mean you are pushing them past their breaking point or making them feel unappreciated. It just means you introduce ideas that maybe they've been avoiding for their whole life that helps them to feel better. And before we talk about those aspects, I want to talk about my own relationship a little bit because I think it helps. I used to be avoidantly attached, and so was my significant other. We've been together for quite a long time, and so those are really not issues in our relationship much anymore. However, it was something that was there. And in the beginning of my relationship, there were things that I had to adjust and change in order to make the relationship work. It's true. But I want to talk more about my significant other because my reason that I changed or the things that I had to change, there was some external factors that kind of pushed me or pressured me into doing it. So it wasn't fully the relationship. It was, but there was a lot of other things, okay? His was more like specifically the relationship, but it wasn't me pushing him. It was his own self to some extent. I've talked about this before, that before he wouldn't really text people for even days on end or in general, not even just romantic relationships, but friends. He would never really let anybody get close to him. But with me, I'm not sure particularly why, but right when we actually met and he asked me for my number and we went on a date, etc., he really challenged himself almost immediately. I think part of it was because things that I didn't like, I said it right away. And so maybe he wasn't used to that. I'm not sure. But then he just readjusted, whatever it is. But he never went like a day without texting me, even like a couple hours. That's never something we had. We've never broken up before, at least not to this day. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but we've never broken up. We've only gotten further in our commitment. And the reason why I bring that up is because very likely the relationship was very challenging to both of us to some extent. So it wasn't like very, very comfortable, but it was challenging in a way where it built bonds stronger. At least that's my own relationship. It doesn't mean I was uncomfortable or he was uncomfortable, but it was just we did a lot of things that we never did for anybody else. I was really young when I got with him anyway. So that's why I'm not bringing myself up because I was just young in general. I didn't have that much experiences, but he's a decade older than me. So he did. And there are so many things that he did with me that he's never done with anybody else. And some of that was like seeing that person frequently, even though that wasn't something I necessarily asked for, it just kind of happened, but texting very frequently, talking very frequently, things like that. But the other ones were, he mentioned that he never put this much effort into a relationship before. I never asked him to put effort, but he mentioned that that's something he wants to do. And so I think part of that is some of the things that we're going to talk about today with all the experience I've also had with seeing marriages and relationships as a therapist. I've noticed that these are the patterns that I see in relationships that last for a long time with an avoidant where they don't have like a constant breakup cycle and they just continue to build stronger. The first one is accountability. That's something me and my significant other always held each other and we always took accountability. But even during or after arguments, mentioning that you don't want them to feel uncomfortable, but you want them to apologize or you want them to see your side a little bit or apologize if they said something hurtful, something of that sort, where you're expecting accountability to some extent. It doesn't mean you're angry, but you just mentioned this is what I want. It's almost instruction based. And I talk very instruction based. So maybe that's why it was really easy for him to do some of these things. But that's what I was always like. He apologized pretty much naturally. But sometimes if he didn't understand where I was coming from, when things would calm down, I would mention, by the way, I did want to mention I didn't like that this happened. And I don't, I don't want to see that happen again. I know you don't want to as well. I know you didn't mean to, but this was something that bothered me. Can we make it a point for both of us to make sure we don't get into a situation like that? And that worked for my relationship. The next one is encourage responsibility. This is really important. Avoid doing things for each other that you can do, that they can do themselves, that won't make them feel like you're trying to control them, but you're also letting them take initiative, okay? And so if you want them to message you more, for example, ask them. If you want them to do something romantic on Valentine's Day, tell them exactly what that is. You want them to be with you and your family for Easter, whatever it is. You mention that clearly what you want. It's really important. I'm just talking about my own relationship because I feel like that's just on my mind right now, I guess. One thing that, this is going to sound a little silly, I don't really plan the dates. I would rather my significant other do it, but I'm really particular about what I eat. I'm just like that in general, or where we go. And so I always tell him I want to go on a date at, soon, right? Whatever it is. And he'll set that up. That's fine. But I always mention I want the menu to have like a salad or soup menu. I don't want him to wear a graphic t-shirt. Maybe this is too picky, but this is the way I am, or maybe it's not picky enough. I don't know. I don't want a graphic t-shirt. So I just want I want something casual, like a casual date, but I don't want him to show up like that, for example. The other thing is I usually like that it's a more low-key place. So I prefer like sports bars and things like that. I don't like super elevated things. I don't know why. That's just a me thing. I don't like that. To me, it feels like there's too much pressure to make the night like perfect. I don't know. So I really don't like very upscale dates. I actually hate them. But hate is a really strong word, so I shouldn't have said that. I dislike them. I don't like that. To me, I'd rather just casual, but it still puts us in a romantic type of setting because we're on a date, but I don't want it to be like that much. So those are like my rules for dates, and I tell him that, and if I need that adjusted, I tell him that prior, and then he does everything else. So I still give him instructions to some extent, but I know that he can do it himself. So I'm not going to say, I made the reservation, let's go at this time. That's not what I do. I say, I want to do this, and then I let him handle that, and it works for me. Not every relationship is like that, but that's what encourage responsibility does. He will do something very similar. A lot of times when I am trying to figure something out, for me, I like to have a more collaborative or not very emotional, it's not emotional, but I'm very conflict avoidant, and I have gotten better with that. But often I may be very uncomfortable about if a friend is really upset, I'm like, okay, I don't want to, ask her what's wrong because maybe she'll crash out. And that's not fair. And so he might say, hey, you should probably talk to her, but he's not going to say, you should do X, Y, and Z or A, B, and C. He just will encourage that a little bit, but he's not going to tell me, what you should do in your friendship or how you should do this or how you should do whatever it is. He has more experience in a lot of things than I do, but he never tells me exactly what to do, but he gives me a little bit of prompting. And sometimes that helps me. I don't know. That's just me. The next one is processing arguments in a more constructive way towards the end. You can mention, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen in the future? How can we resolve this? Maybe we should talk about this another time. Something to keep it a little bit have some closure while still not always just nitpicking the argument. This one's a common one too. And the next one is you want to show genuine feelings when you're hurt. You don't want to hide when you're crying or when you're frustrated or when you're upset. You want to show that to your partner in a manageable way because it allows them to understand your inner world and it helps them better. And the next one is when they disappoint you, don't just not talk about it again. Go over the possibility of negotiation later and try to come up with a compromise together. These are some of the examples, and I'm going to go ahead and summarize. The first one is accountability. Second one is encourage responsibility. Third one is process arguments in a constructive way towards the end. Give some closure, kind of summarize the meeting to some extent. Show genuine feelings when you're hurt, and when you're disappointed, bring it up again at some point when things are calmer or when rapport is built stronger. So I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.